Hey, good afternoon, everybody. Good afternoon. Welcome to the Monday market update, okay, for Monday, the 20th of October, 2025. It is the 200th Monday market update. So I think I started this during a lockdown in would have been about March 2020. So yeah, we've been going for over 5 years, crikey. Where's those 5 years gone, ladies and gentlemen? But anyway, listen, for those of you who've joined us throughout those 5 years, thanks very much. It is appreciated. I really do appreciate the kind of the feedback and the commentary and the suggestions I get. I really do take it all on board. But thank you for those of you who've joined us through our sessions. Here we are for the session for Monday, 20th of October, 2025. If, like me, you've probably had a morning of fighting the internet. I understand there's a big outage with Amazon Web Services this morning. It's caused me all sorts of grief and what have you. So if you're watching this later, I hope the day hasn't been too bad for you, and hopefully you can get some respite and some solace from what we're about to talk to. For those of you joining us for the first time who've never been to the Monday Market Update, it is literally that. It is me flying through as much as I can fit in the next 25, 30 minutes, taking a look at strength and weakness across FX indices and commodities markets, looking at a few charts of interest that might be of relevance you might want to add to your watch list, and then a look at what's going on in the live markets themselves. It is not a signal service. There are no trade recommendations. I'm just sharing what I'm looking at and what might be of interest to me, and that might help you in your own views as well. As always, you're very welcome here, but just remember that you're always responsible for your own trading decisions. And if you want some more education, I will be delivering the Active Trades Monday Market Matters webinar at 2 o'clock London time for Active Trades. Today's session will be the education element will be focused on how do traders use stop losses. So it will be primarily about educating people about risk management. So you're very welcome to join us there. You can either use that QR code or just register on the Active Trades website itself. And as always, if you need a little bit of accountability to help you with your trading journey, then you are welcome to join the VTP tag group. Okay, that's the whole idea, is to hold you accountable and help you develop your confidence and your discipline. As always, you can use the QR code there or the bit.ly tag, or just ping me if you've got any questions. Right, let's get into the main thrust of our session today. Okay, so let's just bring up the old drawing tool here. I appreciate if you're kind of new to trading or new to joining us, this might look a little bit overwhelming or intimidating. It's not meant to be. It's just me taking snips of what I create myself, my own model at the weekend, where I'm looking to identify the sort of strength and weakness and trends and momentum within primarily FX, but also indices and commodities markets. So where are we and what is this telling us? Well, we are into number 43 week of the year for the 20th of October. Where's the strength? Where's the weakness? Well, Swiss franc remains top of the pile, which is interesting to me for reasons we'll look at in the live markets. Euro, still remains in second place. At the bottom of the pile, we still have Kiwi dollar and we still have Japanese yen. Kiwi dollar, not a massive surprise about that. Japanese yen, well, we're basically just getting a little bit involved with sort of internal, let's say, Japanese domestic politics. That's having an impact on markets, and we will probably see that continue this week as part of that. Looking closer to home, what we have is sterling. It still remains in third place, but if I look at sterling here, then this is looking at the kind of the STAM in individual currencies. It is very much a mixed pen, and those of you who've joined us regularly will know it. That's what I've been talking about over the last few months, is that basically it is the UK sterling is very much a mixed picture. It's strong against a couple, weak against many others, and so it is holding on to that third place, but I think it's holding on due to the weakness of others more so than any particular strength within sterling itself. So we saw the kind of politicians were crowing last week that we had the GDP sort of last month was up by 0.1%. Okay, crowing about that being an exciting number. Yep. So make of that what you will. But I think we're looking at like it's going to be an annual GDP of about 1.3%, which is just it's just basically it's asthmatic, isn't it? It's it's not in any way going to sort of fill the black holes in her budget that we're all waiting to see. Okay, and invariably we've still got a good what 5-6 weeks to go till that. And invariably, everybody be holding on to their hat until we get some more clarity on how bad we're all going to get stiffed. But anyway, listen, dollar remains in the kind of the middle of the case. Yes, it has strengthened. Yes, there was a bit of weakening because we've had another kind of interesting week last week, and we're going into another interesting week. Of course, we've got lots of earnings releases, as we will look at in a moment. We look at some charts of interest, but of course we've also got that overall the kind of the US-China talks. Okay, so a week last Friday, sort of Trump blew it all up, and then over the last couple of days, he's been sort of simmering down, saying that tariffs are unlikely to be able to be sustained at 100%, etc. So it's the standard Trump playbook there. Okay, blow it up and then sort of walk back from it, and then invariably they'll find a level in the middle. And I think Besant and the Chinese vice premier are meeting this week, so invariably people will be intrigued to see what they've got to say in terms of is there any progress there. We're also still hampered by the US government shutdown there. Okay, I think it's on course to be, I think, the longest ever. But if you are more of a historian of American economics and I've got that wrong, then please feel free to let me know and stuff. But the fact that it's even in the ballpark is telling us a fair bit. What we saw was Aussie has weakened, and a lot of that is a reference to basically being used as a proxy for China. The China data is it's mixed as always. It's mixed and it's opaque, and I think, of course, that invariably the people are reading into an awful lot about the sort of the tariff war as well, and in particular how that is going to have an impact. I think also this week is it's like the kind of big meeting, isn't it, of the Chinese Communist Party, where they set out their kind of 5-year plans and such. So invariably, investors, traders, strategists will all be sort of kind of watching that to see what, if any, kind of major announcements are made from that. And Canadian dollar is kind of pulling up the sort of the condols there. That kind of condols, they're weaker, right? That is probably an indication of the overall risk sentiment that we see at the moment. And certainly for this week, at the start of this week, you can see pretty thin there. Okay, not much happening. So a couple of really good trades on an intraday basis on sterling this morning for us, but generally it's been a little bit dull, a little bit thinner. But I think that will change as the week goes on, as we get some geopolitical data from the kind of China-US trade talks, some elements of the Trump's commentary, and also some of the data, because it's a thin data week. Okay, part of that is due to, as I said, the American shutdown. But for UK, we've got CPI 7 o'clock Wednesday morning, and then we've also got PMIs on Friday morning. But other than that, it's a kind of thin on the formal economic data. But as I said, I think everyone will be focused on the earnings. Earnings weeks really, or rather, earnings season really gets stuck in this week. There's a good deal of big names being played out this week, okay, which we'll look at in a moment. We're looking at in the season commodities, okay. A couple of weeks ago, everything was giddy. Everything was green and giddy. Now, not so much. Oil remains sort of, soft, not a shocker. VIX, okay, VIX remains on the bearish side as well, and that's probably a little bit of an indication of a sentiment. I'll be intrigued to see how we are at the end of this week, okay? Do the earnings numbers, are they good numbers that basically provide the catalyst for markets to sort of shake off this let's say this kind of negative sentiment over the last 10 days or so, or will those numbers be weak and kind of add to the sort of tale of woes that we're starting to see? So Yeah, we'll see that. As I said, none of the indexes are in kind of any major tactical or strategic buying or selling idea at the moment. Okay, yeah, Aussie is and stuff, but it's not one I particularly actively trade. It's just more I use it as a reference point. But the ones I would engage with, they're pretty thin at the moment, and we'll see the reason for that when we switch across to the chart. So, plenty going on. Plenty coming down the pipe this week. Okay, so as always, keep on top of the news flow, keep on top of the order flow, and keep on top of your risk management. Okay, so let's have a look at some charts of interest. As I said, there's quite a bit coming out this week. Some really big names, okay, that that'll be covered by lots of other people. So you've got Netflix and Tesla and a whole host of Ford. Okay, we'll look at etc. Intel, a whole of P&G, a whole host of big companies. All right, but as usual, I kind of like to look at some things that are maybe a little bit different, and also, of course, I'm always interested in sort of aerospace and defense. This is Raytheon, okay, RTX, all right, Raytheon builders of missiles, all right, basically Patriot missiles, I think, Sidewinder missiles, AMRAAM missiles, okay, if you want a missile, you're pretty much buying it from Raytheon, okay, and they do other things, but that's what they're always known as. Why are we interested in this? Well, they've got their earnings are coming out. I think it's tomorrow before the open. Listen, this is a weekly chart, and you can see that it's been pretty it's been a pretty solid run, hasn't it? Been pretty good run, considering what had been going on with Raytheon. Okay, they had a big fine about. Was it about a year ago? Maybe less than a year ago. They had a big fine, okay, because it turned out that they were, let's say, just selling tech to both sides, which is, in the old days, that would have been seen as treason, and you'd have ended up with your head on a spike outside the Tower of London. These days, that's just seen as commercial ability. Make of that what you will. But anyway, despite that, Raytheon has continued to sort of drift its way higher. Well, not drift; it's actually driven itself quite nicely. But I'm interested that, as I said, we've got earnings tomorrow. But actually, just look at what we printed. Okay, last week there. Okay, we printed there. A really big bearish engulfing candle, key reversal candle, and so the question is that an indication of what we can expect through the earnings tomorrow's? Most people are expecting pretty good earnings from Raytheon. Turns out that wars are good if you're the company selling lots of missiles through it. Or is this just more a case of a little bit of an overall, let's say, an overall bearishness that's weighing on an awful lot of aviation and aerospace and defense stocks, which we're going to look at a bit more in this sector. So my view would be that if Raytheon's numbers are good, it would not surprise me for us to get a little bit of a bump there. But what I'll be looking for is the kind of overall market sentiment, overall sentiment of aerospace and defence companies, because of course what we also have is Trump having sort of having established a version of peace in Gaza. All right, that can change and has been. His next spot is going to want to sort out the sort of Russia-Ukraine situation. That, if you look at European defence stocks, once again, they have all drifted off the last couple of weeks as they talk about, Putin, Trump meeting to talk about finishing the Ukraine situation. That would be great for the people of the area, but not so good for defence stocks. So watch that bearishness. Does that bearishness increase as the conversations get closer towards some sort of deal over Ukraine? So just watch that, how that plays this week. Talking about another American defence company. So not only is Raytheon, tomorrow you've got Lockheed Martin. They've got their own. It's an interesting chart to me. All right, Lockheed Martin, you can see, had a real good run up, but then actually, bang, the sort of election of Trump hasn't necessarily been that great for Lockheed Martin. Okay, and we saw real price drift its way back to the 200, and then sort of find itself in this kind of range for a good while, for a good period, for various reasons. Okay, I think generally just A, defence stocks, B, outbreaks of the possibilities of peace, and C, also just Lockheed Martin in terms of the contracts they are winning, or not winning or not bidding for that have had that impact. But what we did see earlier in the summer was that we pressed to these lows, had a really nice false breakout, and then actually it's been great over the summer. Lockheed Martin have had a good summer. You can see that they have basically over those last 12 weeks, that has been a pretty strong run. But where we find ourselves here, okay, over the last couple of weeks is, we've pushed up to the big round number of $500. For me, I would see that as a weak evening star formation, which is normally a bearish price action. Why do I call it weak? Because actually, even though we had a bearish close and we've kind of closed beneath the kind of 50% of the sort of range of candles 1 and 2, there's still a lot of wick there, isn't there? I would have been liked us to have had a much more stronger bearish close. Nonetheless, as I said, it's an evening star. It's a reversal at a big round number. The day before their earnings. Once again, a bit like what we just said about rating. If their numbers are good, I would expect us to at least drift back up to that 500. If their numbers are poor and we continue to get, as I said, that overall bearishness on aerospace and defence, well, then I think actually that we kind of look to drift down towards this kind of 470 area. Okay, 460 to 470. That's what I'd be looking for. So. Yeah, let's see. Will those numbers tomorrow, will they be a catalyst, or will those numbers just be overwhelmed by overall market sentiment based upon what we see happening over the next week or two? Another aviation company that is releasing their earnings this week is American Airlines. And we looked at a few airlines, I think a good few weeks back. I think we looked at like Delta, etc. So here we go. This is American. They've got their numbers, I think, before the open on Thursday. So it's been quite an intriguing run now. If you look at, you've got sort of $10 and $20 here. Okay, well, you could say that for the last few years we've been in a range, but that range has had some nice swings on it. Okay, swings that are finished by look, once again, that's kind of a better evening star formation, or even here. I think I shorted off here when we printed that really big bearish engulfing candle, key reversal candle at previous highs, and we just fell our way down to sort of $10. And it was you might look at that as a bit of a double bottom there. Okay, you might actually even look at it as a bit of a tactical double bottom there. Either way, we kind of worked our way, we kind of ground our way, I'd say. You're in a kind of a bit of a flag pattern there. But what I'm looking at is, of course, is that we've had that American government shutdown, and of course, that includes things like people like air traffic controllers. So that has had all sorts of disruption, on the kind of, let's say, the flying networks, the airline networks across the US and elsewhere. And I think they had a bit of a major disruption over the weekend as well, American Airlines as part of it. So, as I said, their numbers come out on Thursday. What do I see? Well, when I look at this, I look at us, basically, we've fallen away. We're at the kind of bottom of this really badly drawn sort of, flag pattern, that you can see there. As I say every week, I'm a better trader than I am an artist, but you get the gist of what we're looking at. I'm particularly looking at you've got two bearish pin bars there, under $12, under that 20-period moving average. If those numbers are poor on Thursday, well, then I think actually, that kind of drifts us down towards $10. That's what my view would be. If those numbers are poor, and that basically lines up with that overall bearish sentiment, then basically we work our way down there. That would be my bias. And of course, if those numbers are great, well then I would not be surprised if we popped up to the sort of 50 at 13. But looking at the overall situation, that's what my view would be. All right, that I'll just watch that and see how that particularly plays out from Thursday onwards. Another company, not an aerospace or defense company. Okay, this is a Ford Motor Company. Okay, they've got their earnings after the close on Thursday. I was kind of just intrigued by this weekly chart here. Once again, all right, $10. Right, $10 has been a significant level there. We had a real kind of bit of a false breakout from it there. There was a kind of nice Vulcan trade there, and we've had a bit of a dodgy trend line, but you get the gist, namely that. And if you look back on the charts, every time the price is pushed up, it has failed to make new highs, okay, and it is being suppressed downwards. But the reason I'm interested in at the moment as well is not only earnings, but just look at that price action there. That we've printed that bearish engulfing candle, bearish key reversal candle because price pushed to a new high and rolled over and closed beneath the low of the previous candle. And we're also, I look at us, we're kind of stuck. We're a bit squeezed there by the green 200 and the blue 20. Now, we haven't closed beneath the blue 20 yet, and haven't done so for what's that, back for about 5-6 months. Okay. But once again, whenever price and moving averages come together, it is normally it is price coiling up. I see it as price getting squeezed before it's about ready to expand higher. And so once again, you look at, well, what could make it move, expand higher, break out of that coil? Well, of course, as I said, we've got numbers on Thursday after close, and I'll be intrigued to see what happens there. Of course, I think we looked at it maybe a week or two ago, and we talked about some of the American automotive companies, okay, are being singed by the collapse of a couple of companies that were dealing with auto loans, etc., and also sort of automotive parts, etc. And that has had kind of a bit of a blowback effect on finance companies. I think last week we looked at Jefferies. That followed through nicely on the short side. But equally, has Ford also caught a piece of that just because, as I said, overall kind of negative market sentiment. So this will be on my watch list. I will wait to see what the numbers are on Thursday and see, is that the catalyst to get us to break out? If the numbers are great, well, I need to see us getting above the weekly 200 period, above that $12.5 mark. Okay, that to me would be bullish in the short term. Okay, once again, I'd want to break through that. On the flip side, if that kind of negative market sentiment comes, if the numbers are poor, if the kind of outlook is poor, I start to look at, well, we need to break that 20, and in which then, I'm looking, can we sort of work our way back down towards that $10, which has, as you can see, has acted as a real magnet over the last year or two. So, yeah, those numbers will give us maybe a bit of clarity. Okay, so there you go. Some charts of interest you can add to your watch list. Take a look. Let us move across now and have a look at the live market. So if you just bear with me for a moment, what we'll do is we'll switch across to the charts and see what the other live markets are telling us. Okay, so I hope that you can still all hear me. I hope that you can still all see me. This is kind of an indices profile that I have going on here. I've got Dow on the weekly, NASDAQ on the weekly, S&P 500 on the weekly, Russell on the weekly. Oil, West Texas on the weekly, DAX on the weekly, Nikkei, and close to home, the FTSE on the weekly. So, what's going on? The kind of intriguing, we talked about it here, a couple of weeks ago we had basically those kind of bearish engulfing candles, key reversal candles, okay, or even the same with basically the Russell. Last week, if you look at that on the weekly, we've printed a kind of it's a strange one. They are inside bars, and they are bullish closes on the inside bars, but there's also a lot of whips to both sides there, isn't there? I would look at that more as kind of high wave spinning top, which is a little bit of an indecisive candle. When we look at a couple of the daily charts, that might give us, can that give us a bit more, a little bit more insight? Well, when I look at the daily chart, the way I look at it is that price is mostly being contained between the daily 50 and the daily 20. Can you see that there? If we get breaks above it and close, well then that's bullish, and we assault those highs. If the sentiment is negative, well, we drift our way back to the lower, to that daily 50, and then if we get beneath that 50, that's when we start to really look at it as being kind of bearish. So, as I said, there is the earnings data this week will be the catalyst, either to pump it higher. I think most people are expecting numbers to be good. It will be, I think, the kind of outlook in terms of what they say about their next couple of quarters of earnings. That is what I think markets will focus on. But the way I look at it at the moment, we're being basically we're corralled between the 20 and the 50 on the daily chart there at the moment. That's for the S&P 500. Does it get any really different on the others? Well, NASDAQ, you might say, well, Paul, NASDAQ is actually pivoting around the 20. You're up close above it, close beneath it, close above it, close beneath it, close above it. The direction of travel is still sort of bullish, but it's just pivoting around the daily 20 there, isn't it? And so, as I said, we're going to need some positive catalyst, and maybe those comments from Trump, about China, about walking back on tariffs. Maybe that will be the kind of the bullish catalyst, along with the earnings that pumps us back up to highs. That would be quite something. That'd be quite something to watch, I think. So, a pretty similar picture there across those American indexes. Nikkei continues to work high, but I think part of that is domestic politics and yen weakness. The DAX. If you have clarity on what the DAX is doing, well, then you're a better man than me. If you look at that over these last few months, it has flattered to deceive, on many occasions. I would say that we still remain bullish because we are still, all right, above the weekly 20. We are still sort of grinding our way, but I would say that the price action there, I had a bit of a short on it here, the other day, but it hasn't. The truth of the matter is, it hasn't followed through. It was a nice move down, but it hasn't been able to follow through the daily 50, has it? And actually, today's been kind of a bullish maneuver. Then I think Euro stocks generally sort of kind of had a little bit of a rally up there. So I think there might be lots of people who are thinking, well, Paul, you had your inverse head and shoulders here, you've pushed up here, you've pulled back to the 50, and then actually we're now looking to get a new move higher. What would take that higher? Certainly, as I said earlier, if you look at some of the European defence stocks, and one of the biggest ones on the DAX is, of course, Rheinmetall, the artillery providers. Their share price over the last couple of weeks, having had a fantastic couple of run over the years, that is very bearish and stuff. And so, let us see whether if there is peace in Ukraine, do we get a relief rally? If there is no peace in Ukraine, do we get a rally in Rheinmetall? That's the place we find ourselves at the moment, ladies and gentlemen. And then close to home, FTSE. Listen, that FTSE is still in a bull trend, all right? It's still in a bullish trend, okay? It might not be as pretty as the others, but it is still working its way there. We have still managed to, even though we pulled back last week, we've managed to hold above the 50, haven't we? We've managed to hold above the 50, it's pinned it there. So then you're going to look to see, and I think there is quite a few UK stocks with their earnings this week as well. Can that give us basically a little bit of a bump? Remember, an awful lot of these FTSE 100 companies, okay, are practically international companies, basically making their money overseas, not in the UK. So in some respects, they are immune to the sort of the sort of kind of weighted bearish nature of the Starmer Reeves administration. That is just basically making everybody else miserable. But we pin that. I wonder if we said we pinned the 200s to the 4-hour chart. Bang on Thursday, Friday, and we ended the week coming up. Does it have enough to get above the 50? For me, it has to get above that 4-hour 50 to convince me that we are back being bullish. All right, with that in mind, let's have a look, because of course lots of people will have been interested with the price action on gold and silver. Let's start with silver. We're going to overrun a little bit today, but there's lots to talk through. Listen, silver weekly, it's a parabolic move, isn't it? And we're above $50. But last week, if you look at how we finished last week, basically we came off a fair bit there. If you look at the daily chart, Friday's candle was actually, that's a bearish engulfing candle. Did have a bit of a push up, but it's a bearish engulfing candle. You can see on the 4-hour chart, we swept the highs of the earlier week, and then we came back to the 50. But once again, the thing is, we are still above that 4-hour 50. That's the thing. We're still above that 4-hour 50. That is, looking as a place that sort of kind of dip buyers are getting long into. For me, I would be saying, right, okay, if price pops up, then it has to get above that 20. All right, the 20's acted as fantastic support here for the last couple of months, hasn't it? Just look at that dynamic support. If it flips from being support to resistance, well, then, we drift lower back to 50. So, I see, does it have the energy to get up to the 20? Once it's there, does it have the energy to get above it? In which case we're going higher. If it doesn't, well, then I think we roll and drop to 50. That's what I'd be looking there for silver. That doesn't necessarily mean the whole trend is over. Lots of people this weekend were sort of saying that the trend for gold and silver was over. I'm not sure I'd necessarily call it that. But certainly, as you can see, I mean, if you just look at that gold on the weekly chart, that's parabolic. And those of you who've joined us before will know that I'll say that, when price goes parabolic, if you are in it, tighten up your stops. If you're not in it, stay on the sidelines, because the likelihood is you're probably going to be buying the actual tops. I think that gold is the hedge trade. If there is movement on Ukraine, if there is movement on US-China trade, tariff talks, progress moves, well, then I think that kind of takes some of the wind out of gold's sails. If you look at the daily, Friday's candle, it's a bearish candle. It wasn't an engulfing candle, not really, certainly not a key reversal candle. All right. If you look at the 4-hour charts, people start to get a little bit intrigued. But once again, it's holding the 4-hour 20 period moving average there for the moment, isn't it? If you look at the hourly chart is that's what people in the China session and the Asian session, we double topped on the 1-hour chart and then followed it through in London and New York. Okay. But, today, we're just holding above the 100, we're in between the 50 and the 100. Okay. Now, of course, you might say, well, Paul, is it not just this? You're just basically literally pulling back up into the kind of this golden zone before we take the next leg down. That is a distinct possibility. That's why I'll be watching this on the 4-hour chart. If we get up into that area and then start to print bearish price action, a bit like what we looked at on silver, well, then I'd be looking at as a drift to the 50. But at the moment, it's holding the 20. It is still the uncertainty. It's still the uncertainty trade in that particular sense. Bitcoin. Well, it's been a right volatile couple of weeks, hasn't it, for people? So, I'll just look at that in terms of, it's kind of a broadening formation there that we're just looking at there. Just bear with me 1 second. Let's just change the color. That's a different, so you can see a little bit better. There we go. Yeah, you might say a bit of a broadening formation that has been growing there. Okay. Certainly, if we go down to the daily chart, I mean, look at the swings there. In this, in where we are, we've hit all-time highs and then drafted all the way back to the 200 there, isn't it? But we've bounced off that 200. Okay, we got as low as, was it about 103? I think, yeah, into the kind of 103 region. From 126 to 103, I'm sure there will have been a lot of people who were terrified of that if they've got in at highs. But we bounced off it all right there on that 4-hour chart. We came down to that area and we're back up above the 4-hour 50. That just all right. Let's see if we can get back up to the 200 and above. All right, up to that would kind of change people's viewpoints. I think on that. Okay, we'll see if we've got any particular if the how the chart patterns show up, or rather how my platforms work this week. Okay, they have been slow, and as I said, I appreciate there's been most people have had issues with internet all day, haven't they, and stuff. So we might have to just watch and see how these come on, bring themselves up. If not, we'll just go to my other charts here and stuff. Yeah, it's taking a fair bit of time. All right, okay. Listen, we'll just do dollar and sterling. Okay, dollar. Here we go. So, bang, Aussie dollar on the daily, Kiwi dollar on the daily, Euro dollar on the daily, dollar CAD on the daily, pound dollar on the daily, dollar Swiss on the daily, dollar yen on the daily, and then dollar index on the weekly chart there. Okay, let's always go to the dollar index. Bang, we talked about it, how we had finally got above the weekly 20 period moving average, which we hadn't been above since February. But then, last week is a bit of it's an inside bar, bearish inside bar, a bit of a high wave candle, lots of wicks to either side. As you can see, we pushed our way up, but then fell back. All right, there's lots of a US government shutdown. Will some of that negativity in terms of what we just talked about with regards to maybe some of the finance companies, some of the auto companies, will that encourage a faster and deeper rate cuts from the Fed, in which case that would not be good for the dollar, and I think that may have weighed on people, and so we saw a drift down. But if you look at that, that's a fiery cross there. Okay, 3-bar reversal, bouncing off the 50 and the 20, and so you'll be looking to will that have follow through this week? Will that have follow through? Can we rely on that? That would be that's what we'd be looking at there. That kind of ever since the kind of the FOMC here mid-September, we have kind of worked away, and is this just another leg? Is this just another bull flag in a move higher? Okay, so that's what I'll be looking at there, and it's kind of a little bit shown up by Aussie dollar has been doing the same. Kiwi dollar has been doing the same. Okay, even euro dollar can't get back above the 50. Cable we'll look at in a moment. Even interestingly, even Swiss franc. Okay, the Swiss franc is has been priced. There's a nice move trade on there this morning. Dollar is weakening against the yen and weakening against the Swiss franc, which would make you think there's a kind of like risk-off sentiment going on there. But it is, I wouldn't exactly say it's a terribly clear one at the moment, ladies and gentlemen. All right, as I said, maybe markets are just waiting for the outcome of either A, Trump's comments on China, or B, the meeting between Besant and the Chinese. All right, maybe that'll be the catalyst. Okay, if everybody's happy and giddy, markets will get happy and giddy. If it doesn't come out very well, then invariably a little bit of gloom and doom will switch across. Okay, let's finish off with sterling. I appreciate we've overrun a little bit today, but lots going on, isn't there? Lots going on. So what have we got here? Cable on the daily, euro sterling on the daily, pound Aussie, pound Canadian, pound New Zealand, pound Swiss, pound yen. Okay, so as I said, remember sterling's at STAM at the moment, but in terms of third in the STAM, but part of that is because, as you can see, pound against Aussie, okay, has rallied, pound against New Zealand dollar, pound against Canadian dollar. That's more about those kind of condol weakness. That's what's been kind of keeping up the end of sterling, okay, because once we start looking at pound against dollar, we just looked at a little bit of that kind of dollar strength. It waned a bit last week, and sterling kind of benefited from it. But still, if I look at that, it's not exactly exciting, isn't it? But it's just kind of, there's a slow grind lower on that. Okay, slow grind lower, and you might say, well, actually, Paul, that is a really big weekly double top there. We need to really sort of kind of break down to 130 to play it out, which I think would be a case of dollar strength and sterling weakness. And then you're looking at, well, what would give you that sterling weakness? Well, I would suggest that kind of news comes out about the budget. Pound against yen, even though we've rallied up, it is weakness. Not exactly, I wouldn't exactly say that's price action for the ages there. Okay, it's clearly sort of just grinding its way there, but there is that element of, even though yen is near bottom of the STAM, maybe there is kind of a little bit of a risk-on sentiment, or risk-off sentiment rather, and that I would suggest is confirmed by the pound against the Swiss franc. Right, we have continued our kind of slumber lower there, haven't we? If you look at that from mid-August, that has just really been sterling weakening against and Swiss franc strengthening, and that has been the kind of direction of travel. We look at euro against sterling. Isn't that just kind of, you're looking at the daily chart for October? I wouldn't exactly say that is really very exciting with you. That is just, there's been some great intraday traders. If like me, you're a kind of mean reversion trader on intraday. There's been some great opportunities on that, but if you're looking to longer term swing trend, get into that, there's not much joy to be had. Not much joy to be had in there. Okay, so everybody's waiting for the catalyst that's going to basically make that next move. Okay, ladies and gentlemen, let's draw it to a close there. Thanks very much for joining us, for watching us. Okay, as always, I appreciate we've overrun a little bit, but there is an awful lot going on. It is going to be a busy week, ladies and gentlemen. So as I said earlier, make sure you're on top of the news flow. Make sure you're on top of the order flow. Make sure you're on top of your risk management. I hope you have a fabulous trading week, everybody, and I look forward to speaking to you soon. Trade well and take care, everybody. Cheers.